Welcome to Own Your Heart Health. I'm Dr. Regina Druz, your holistic cardiologist. This week, we will dive into common heart health concerns, uncovering root causes, and unpacking scientific discoveries and controversies. The information provided does not constitute medical advice. Please contact your healthcare practitioner before making any changes that may impact your health. So, and just like that, we are in 2025. Welcome everybody to the first episode of 2025. And I'm going to probably tap into something that everyone is thinking about right now, or is contemplating to do. And of course, you know what it is. It's weight loss. So the topic of this episode is why your fasting isn't working and what you can actually do about it. And I got inspired to record this when I actually read a submission on a patient form. You know, obviously we have patient forms and we solicit input from patients as they about to come into our programs at the holistic heart centers. So we do want to know what challenges patients are facing and what health issues potentially they're looking to resolve, and understand if their health goals align with something that we can help them to fulfill. And so this particular patient, a woman in her 60s, actually is a very active person who is taking ownership of her health. And on her form, this patient says that she is already gluten-free, eating low carbohydrate diet, exercising every day of the week, mixture of various exercises, including yoga. And despite all of this, her cholesterol continues to go up, and she recently gained 10 pounds. And I reflected on it because I feel like I had seen it actually quite often with multiple patients. Patients come in and they say, well, doc, you know, I'm already doing everything right. I fast, 14, 16, 18 hours per day. I limit my carbs. I work out. And despite all of this, I cannot lose any weight, or there has been some weight loss and now I'm hitting a weight loss plateau, or my cholesterol doesn't budge. And what's worse, I'm actually seeing my cholesterol increase, or I'm seeing my glucose increase or hemoglobin A1C increase, and sort of I'm heading in the wrong direction. And this particular patient captured this because on their form, she said, I'm doing all of these things, which are the right things to do, right? We've been told that these are the right things to do, and I'm doing them, and I'm doing them consistently. I'm really committed to this. And yet my lifestyle and my labs are heading in the opposite directions. So if you've been in this boat, I guess, where your lifestyle effort didn't really bring forward an improvement in your clinical parameters, let's say your blood work, your weight, your blood pressure measurements, you have to ask yourself, what actually is going on? And what I found out over the past year, myself and my team working with multiple patients on improvement in their metabolic health, is that when your fasting fails, or actually when your entire lifestyle approach fails, there are usually three things that are the reason why that had occurred. And it is not what you think, because this is going to be a situation of when less is actually more. So in this episode, I'm going to give you an insight into what I call 3 O's, 3 overs, 3 O's for 3 overs, 3 overdos that a lot of patients, a lot of us adults are doing as we are looking to improve our longevity, as we're looking to improve our vitality, as we're trying to prevent or come off medications and actually take ownership and control of our health. So there are those 3 O's or overdos that multiple adults are doing that are actually producing the effect opposite of what they expect. So we're going to discuss this in the first part of this episode. And then I'm actually going to show you how we approach this at the Holistic Heart Centers so that you understand that in the current day and age, in the year 2025, we have tools and resources that could absolutely help us to dial in exactly what we're supposed to be doing and not guess, right? Why should you be guessing where you can actually enjoy a detailed, personalized approach that allows you to transform your health? And it's not very difficult. It just requires understanding, consistency, and commitment, and the ability to be coached. So what are the three O's or three overdues that we typically see that jeopardize people's lifestyle effort? So very often we see it primarily in women, although men also unfortunately happen to partake in the three O's. And we see it in conjunction with the nutrition mostly. So 2 out of the 3 O's are related to nutrition lifestyle. And the third one is more general and actually related to exercise and recovery. So the first O, or the first overdue, is that many adults who are looking to achieve health optimization actually overfast, right? So I routinely see patients who come in and they say, oh, I've been fasting for 14 hours. I can go 16 hours without food, just drinking water. I'm going to do 24-hour water only fast. And when they tell me this, I say, please don't. And the reason why I'm telling them not to do this is that we observed, and this is known in the literature as well, it's not some sort of a new observation, people do know about it, is that there is a certain fasting threshold. And beyond that threshold, on a daily basis, your body goes into a state of stress, right? So we are programmed as the creatures that are aligned with the circadian rhythm, right? Day and night, we are programmed to fast over the night time. And that's what actually primitive humans did most of the time. And then go and find some sort of food. And so we have breakfast, right? Or break fast. And there's a certain time window that our biological system, which is usually aligned with the circadian rhythm and the daytime, nighttime shifts, our biological system is looking for the first energy input into our body to occur within a reasonable period of time, usually a couple of hours or so, after a person awakens, right? And we know, for example, that when a person awakens, if we test, let's say, their cortisol response, we see this high cortisol spike when a person is up. And this is expected because, you and I, as we wake up, we need that cortisol spike in order to mobilize ourselves and go on and do whatever we need to do, right? However, if you don't eat for prolonged period of time, that cortisol spike is not coming down. So I routinely see patients who, because they are doing the 3 O's, and one of them, the first one is over fasting, their cortisol curves are not normal. They start off high and they sort of remain high, and maybe they drop down a little bit in the middle. And then by the time the night comes, they're high again, which isn't really a great place to be. So this cortisol spike due to overfasting becomes a cortisol sustained spike. And one is functioning in this fight or flight or freeze mode because of the cortisol elevation, which is a pro-inflammatory mode that absolutely impedes metabolic health and weight loss or fat loss. Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Regina here. I know there are contradictory opinions about nutrition for heart health and longevity, Discussion often gets heated and confusing. There are those who push for low fat, low cholesterol, and then there are fans of a ketogenic diet. There are many anti-meat voices as well, suggesting vegan or vegetarian style of eating. With all the chatter out there on what and how to eat, my team and I decided to create a tool for patients, medical professionals to clear the clutter. It is called Holistic Heart University, and it provides on-demand courses, nutrition and lifestyle resources, information on supplements to make it easier to understand how to make healthy choices for your heart. I'm especially proud of our open office hours for program patients and the Q&A feature where you get to ask your individual questions and put us in the hot seat. Head out to the show notes for the link and use my special promo code to get a huge 20% off on our annual health and wellness subscription. The code is OWNER20, and I'll see you in the office hours. So how do we actually figure out, what should be the length of time for a person to fast? Typically, we start off with a very modest fast. It's a usually 12-hour fast and, not more than 14 hours on any given day. And we advise all of our patients to practice time-restricted eating. Now, let me explain that time-restricted eating is not the same as fasting, right? They're related, but they're not the same. Time-restricted eating means that majority of your calories, actually all of your calories, should be consumed in a certain time window. Well, how do you figure out what that window is? Well, that window needs to be aligned with the daytime and preclude you from eating in a nighttime. So if you're living, for example, in warmer climates, a little bit closer to the equator, in a southern climates, let's say Florida or Caribbean, you will notice that even during the wintertime, your days are a little bit longer, right? So you have a little bit more of a window to choose from. If you're in a northern climate, then of course your days are shorter. So your window is a little bit shorter. But in general, let's say for most people in the United States, that time window, and even most people in Europe, this time window is somewhere between, let's say, 10 a.m. and 7 p.m., whatever your local time is, right? You can shift it by an hour or two in whichever direction you need, but you will find that most of the time, even in the locations where there is seasonality and days get longer and days get shorter, and I'm in the location right now where we have seasonality, so we're already past our winter, equinox, and, our days are finally getting longer. And I just came back from vacation where there were a lot of really longer days because it was further other south. But you can start in a very conservative way. And in this very conservative way, you will figure out whether or not a certain fasting interval works for you. So yes, you can fast 12 hours, but please make sure that those 12 hours are also time restricted. In other words, that, fasting interval happens during the nighttime, and the interval when you eat, when you replenish your nutrients, happens during the daytime. Now, we actually, in all of our programs, use a very specific protocol to figure out what should be a fasting window for a given individuals. Now, if you don't have any gadgetry, and you know me, I'm a gadget girl, so there always will be a gadget once in a while in almost all of my episodes. But let's say you don't have any gadgetry, right? So what do? Well, you start with a conservative fasting interval, 12 hours. You make sure that you have time restricted brackets with regard to when you're consuming your nutrients. And you watch for your body response, right? How do you know that you are over fasting? Well, you may experience some listlessness, anxiety, feeling tired, increased heart rate, elevated blood pressure, and sort of just, feeling hungry, to be honest with you. And so this is how you know, just based on your symptoms, that you might be over fasting. in our programs, what we do is that we use this device, which is a device that allows us to measure the amount of macronutrients a person is burning using their breath. And we'll go a bit more into this when we come back to metabolic health, but I'll show you some of the preliminary data from our experiments and our patient group. And so we use device to help individuals to understand if they overfast or underfast, or maybe they are in the sweet spot, right? So this is very important because this is a measurement, a daily measurement. And no, it's not the same as continuous glucose monitoring, because continuous glucose monitoring, or CGM, is really not positioned to give you this level of insight. It could give you some insight, but it's not actually, in our experience, did not help us to connect the dots the way that this particular device did. Now, this device is called Lumen, and we are now at the place in the recording where I'm going to show you some of the preliminary data from our patient group that I'm really excited about. It's sort of just like a high-level overview. And if you're listening to this on your favorite podcasting channel, this is a great opportunity to actually go on YouTube, find this episode, so that you can see what I'm about to show you. We're at 14 minutes and 45 seconds into the recording, so that you can actually go ahead and find it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that you can see this holistic heart centers, what we actually learned. And what we actually learned from our patients who've been very successful in achieving their result is that we have fairly equal number of patients who are men and women, and obviously quite a few of them came to work with us because they're overweight or obese, but some of them are underweight or even healthy weight. And so using the Lumen device, what we were able to do is that we were able to understand what is a fat burn, which is usually associated with fasting, in our patient group. And you could see that in our patient group, 43% of patients were waking up in fat burn, and their fitness goals and their health goals were actually fairly common to what majority of us want. We had almost 39% looking for metabolic health improvement, 23% or so fitness or performance augmentation, and 36% were looking for healthy weight loss. And the progress of these patients who've been compliant with this device has been astounding. But what I want you to show is that the average daily fasting was only 12 hours. Right? So this is why I'm telling you that it is so impactful to be able to actually understand that you should not overfast, because when you overfast, you jeopardize your progress toward metabolic health, healthy weight loss, as well as improvement in athletic performance, because you produce essentially a state of sustained stress response, consistent cortisol elevations that will be holding back what your body is supposed to do, right? So overfast is our first O in this why your fasting isn't working. Well, what is then the second one? The second one is over restricting, right? I gave you a little bit of a patient vignette early on, and I mentioned something in that vignette that maybe you can recall right now, right? That patient said, I'm already gluten-free, I'm already low carb. So what is that second O? What are you over restricting? Many patients over restrict carbohydrates. And I know there are different schools of thoughts, and I'm sure that people will put some comments and tell me how well they did on low carbohydrate diet or ketogenic diet or paleo diet, which actually may have a higher amount of carbs because of a lot of plants. And actually, if you're on a vegan or vegetarian diet, you are having higher carbohydrate content because these are primarily whole food plant-enriched diets, which we know are definitely diets associated with improved health, although not always with improved metabolic health. But what does over-restriction of carbs do? The over-restriction of carbs does not allow you to maintain good muscle mass and lose visceral fat. And it also impairs the ability of your microbiome to stay healthy, because you need the fiber, you need some of the complex carbs and carbs that come with specific nutritional elements to create that pre and probiotic environment that your gut actually needs. And so I find this a huge issue in a lot of patients. Women seem to be specifically or often more affected to it than men. But over restriction of carbs is a real concern. And that's your second O, you're overdoing it. Now, how do we solve this issue? We solve this issue first by taking a nutritional assessment and actually calculating what your macronutrient requirement is supposed to be. And then we adjust this macronutrient requirement based on your nutritional plan. And yes, you guessed it, this nifty Lumen device allows us to create a more precise titration of macronutrients in your diet. So this device actually uses fairly sophisticated artificial intelligence learning protocols to analyze patterns, right? And through analyzing patterns, what it's doing is creating a representation of you. And, those of you who are tech geeks like me know that this is known as digital twin phenomena, right? So this device helps us to have a representation of you with regards to how you process macronutrients and what should be the macronutrient requirement. It is not set in stone. It's not going to be 30% of fat, 30% of protein, 40% of carbs. That's not how it works, because depending on your level of activity, stress, exercise, sleep, and the factors that then modify what your metabolic flexibility actually is, the amount of macronutrients may need to be adjusted, right? You may have to be boosted in carbohydrates, and this device helps us to work with our patients to have what's called a boost day, or you may have time periods where your carbohydrate requirement is reduced. And so I had a few patients that work with us said, well, but this is too many carbs. I usually don't eat that many carbs. And we would usually tell them, look, just try it, because when you try it, you will actually notice that there is a difference. So is it something that you can do on your own without a device? I'm going to say that would be quite challenging, but certainly with a device, we have an extraordinary opportunity to help our patients to stop over restricting the carbohydrates. So this is our second O in our overdues. The first one was over fasting, and the second one is over restricting. And typically it comes to carbs. And so over restricting the carbs and over fasting are the top two reasons. And there's a third one, of course, but these are the top two reasons why I see patients struggling, patients not losing weight, patients not improving their cholesterol, patients not improving their blood pressure, and even patients that we have noticed who have followed these protocols. Many of these patients have accelerated aging, right? As you heard in my previous episode with Ryan Smith, we do measure biological age and organ age. And so we know that accelerated aging is actually something that we are seeing in patients who are over fasting and over restricting carbs. And this is actually not a new finding, although detecting the biological age decrease is fairly novel. But if you are interested in nutrition and would like to understand how should you be fasting properly, we invite you to join our group program where we run something called the Fasting Circle, and we help our patients dial it in so that they don't overfast and don't over restrict. And some of the interesting data actually on over restricting chronically, over restricting your calories or your carbs comes from gerontology investigations. There were been investigations, for example, a long time ago with scientists who lived in a biosphere. It was a biosphere 2 investigation where a part of that experiment was for them using low calorie or hypocaloric diets. And the research had shown that actually health-wise, these people did not do well. They ended up really sustaining some muscle wasting, and they also had increased occurrence of chronic diseases, including cancer. And if you're interested in learning more about it, wait for our subsequent episode coming up shortly on a fasting mimicking diet, where we'll actually discuss fasting in more detail and how fasting and fasting mimicking diet, which are interventional approaches, should be utilized, right? So we'll put more detail into that.
Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Regina here. Many of my colleagues and I are noticing patients coming to us with self-ordered blood tests. When this trend started to gain momentum, I thought it would benefit many patients. After all, who doesn't want more access to health testing? However, I see that self-ordered labs often lead to more confusion and frustration for our patients. Patients are coming in with a pile of labs, and sadly, they're not better off for it. This is why we at Holistic Heart Centers have launched Heartwell Toolkits, a curated collection of blood and genetic markers that one can get at home, focused on heart and brain health, gives you all the data you need to make informed and actionable health decisions. The toolkits can be ordered at our shop on holisticheartcenters.com. You can find the link in the show notes. Use the code TESTING10 to get 10% off and free shipping.
The second O is over restricting carbs. And finally, what is that third O that I say usually jeopardizes people's weight loss effort, fasting effort, lifestyle effort in general? Well, that third O is over stressing, right? So over stress. Now, what is over stress? Many patients say, we are going to, I'm going to go all out. I'm going to fast, 14 to 16 hours per day. I'm going to drop my carbs, and I'm going to work out every single day of the week. I'm going to lift weights. And by the way, the patient whose vignette I gave you before actually provided information that she is lifting weights and she's doing yoga and, working out 7 days a week. Now, I am not saying that you shouldn't be working out 7 days a week. Actually, you should be doing some physical activity every single day, right? This is how human body is made. We're not made to sit in a place. We need to do appropriate level of physical activity every single day. And if you go back or to the earlier part of this episode where I showed you some of the information from our group, and let me reshare it here so that people may look at it again, and we're at about 25 minutes into this recording, you could see that in terms of the workouts in our patient group, our patients were working out 7 days a week, right? This is, not unusual. And, there's been some walking and there have been some weights, and, average daily steps did not hit 10,000, but 10,000 steps is actually a very arbitrary number. And, again, we'll talk about it down the line, what should be these thresholds for exercise and what kind of exercise one is supposed to be doing. So what I wanted to point out, though, is that many patients, when they are working out, they are not understanding that they also need to give themselves a time to recover, right? A human body is not a machine. And so it needs the time to recover, because if you don't recover, you don't repair. And if you don't repair, there is a damage that keeps on accruing constantly, and it will flip your switch from metabolic health to metabolic rigidity. Because the first thing the body does when you overstress it is that it starts to go down the path of metabolic rigidity. And your organs, as well as on a more systemic general level, one may become insulin resistant. And you may have, for example, been an athlete, or potentially maybe you're a physician or health practitioner who's dealing with high performance individuals. And you know that very often they do come in and you find the evidence of this overtraining syndrome. My first experience with this was actually with a very young patient who was a CrossFit fanatic, and, really looked like in fantastic medical shape, fantastic health shape. And this was the first time I realized that certain lifestyle actions, even though they sound great, might be too aggressive for a person, because in terms of their lifestyle, they probably were in the top 10% of exercisers that, maybe all of us aspire to be that way, but we know we're not likely to get there. But in terms of their labs, they looked like they were on the brink of several major diseases, right? So this was the part of their overtraining syndrome. And the hard decision there was for me to convince this patient to change what they're doing workout wise to allow recovery, right? And once they did that, in approximately 60 days, there was a full recovery and restoration of metabolic health and optimal balance. Now, nowadays, we don't need to guess, because what we do is that we can actually, and you can actually monitor your exercise and your recovery and understand what your stress resiliency actually is. Because whether you're leading a stressful lifestyle because of work or family commitments, it's really that physical exertion, if you're not allowing yourself to recover, that will overstress you and will contribute to the failure of the fasting or lifestyle approach in general by flipping the switch from metabolic flexibility to metabolic rigidity. And how do we do this? Well, my perennial favorite is the Oura Ring. You see me wearing it. I really like some of the recent augmentation in the Oura Ring that allows me to see what my stress resiliency pattern has been and to sample my stress level in real time, because that way I can adjust, right? I can take those small breaks. I can go for a walk instead of lifting weights if my body is signaling to me that for whichever reason I am not really recovered or replenished, right? So you may ask, well, this seems like a lot of work, right? We have to use these devices, whether it's a Lumen device or Oura Ring, and, we use many more devices than that. But, how does it all add up? And, should it all add up? And it absolutely does, because I am a huge advocate and an expert in digital biomarkers. And these digital biomarkers is what you are actually using or producing when you interact with digital devices, right? So what are digital biomarkers? Digital biomarkers are simply health signals that are captured from the use of digital devices. It could be anything. It could be a Bluetooth blood pressure cuff. It could be an Oura Ring. It could be our Lumen device, the body composition scale, continuous glucose monitor, your smartwatch, whatever it is that you are using generates digital biomarker signals. And when we sample those digital biomarker signals, we could begin to uncover the patterns. And so what I discussed with you today, those three overdues or three O's that are jeopardizing your fasting or your lifestyle effort, is exactly the consequence of us incorporating digital biomarkers in our programs at the Holistic Heart Centers that led us to this discovery that there are three things that absolutely across the board in any given patient. And in some patients, some of these things play a greater role than others. But these three things jeopardize fasting and jeopardize lifestyle effort: the overfasting, the over restricting of carbs, and the overstressing, meaning working out too much or not balancing your workout, your physical and mental exercises with appropriate recovery, right? So it is 2025, and we have been, I think, during 2024, uh, sort of enamored and captured by generative AI, right? It captured our imagination. It is very quickly advancing into the mainstream in terms of the business applications and whatnot. But I'm here to tell you that what we do at Holistic Heart Centers in 2025 is what is known as AI 2.0. And the reason why it's known as AI 2.0 is because it is not generative. It is not a large language model where you type in a prompt and it gives you some useful advice, but it's much more powerful than that. Because in 2025, we are putting together our first framework for all these signals: digital biomarkers, blood markers, genetic markers, patient-derived markers, to actually bring you a system where we can predict what interventions, what patterns are likely to get you successfully to your health goals. So what that actually means is that we know that health goals are often jeopardized: the weight loss goals, the elevated cholesterol, the high blood pressure, the progression of heart disease, the arrhythmias, the cardiomyopathies, which are the weaknesses in the heart muscle. We know that if we can bring a more comprehensive picture forward and avoid over fasting, over restricting, over stressing, and also use specific strategies to repair the metabolic health, to switch it from metabolic rigidity, that is the hallmark of aging and unfortunately occurs in mid to more mature adulthood with all individuals across the board. The question is just the degree and how much it influences you, and how we can put you in the right place so that you can achieve this metabolic health and metabolic flexibility. And this is really an exciting time for us, for me and my team, that we finally are in a position to help our patients to actually have this ability to understand before they commit to a certain path how likely this path is to help them. So if you want to join us, it is not too late. We are launching our first group program. And I decided that I would like for this first cohort in our group program, this cardiometabolic digitally enhanced group program, I'd like to really appreciate their trust in us. So if you do enroll in the group program before it launches, and it will be launching in the next couple of weeks, you will get a surprise gift from us, something very useful that you will be able to use during this program. So there is a very limited amount of spaces, only 10 spaces, and there are not that many remaining at this point. If you are listening to this, I encourage you to follow us on Facebook and Instagram or YouTube. You can just go in and type a word program. And when you type in the word program, you will receive additional information so that you can claim a free gift with your enrollment. So do it soon so that you are not a person who unfortunately we may have to tell that, we're sort of run out of this and that's that. So I do hope that you share in my excitement and that you will join us to actually take advantage of this incredible opportunity that we have in 2025, which is to leverage digital biomarkers and artificial intelligence 2.0 to actually give patients a way to own their health, right? The name of this podcast is Own Your Heart Health. And this is exactly what I want you to do. I want you to own your heart health, own your health in general, and take incremental, smart steps on the road to health transformation and longevity.
Thank you for tuning in to Own Your Heart Health with Dr. Regina Druz. This podcast is powered by Holistic Heart Centers. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. To learn more about our services, visit holisticheartcenters.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel. The link is in the show notes. See you next week.